Thanks, Laurel. All right, let's see if I can do this. Beautiful. Great. I'll do it from down here, Max. Good morning. How are you? Okay, that's okay. A little half-hearted. That's all right. How good was Dan's testimony this morning, huh? I was just reminded of that verse that just says, where your treasure is, your heart is also. Now, I feel there's something that rises up within us when we, don't worry, we are going to get to fasting, but I'm sure all of you are quite happy to wait for that occasion, actually. But there's just something significant, I think, as a church, just for us to keep allowing our hearts to be warmed when we hear of people coming to faith or when we hear the miraculous things take place. You know, we just want to celebrate those things. We want to treasure them. And we want to have a growing expectation that that's what the Lord's doing. I think the more we hunger and thirst for stuff like that, the more we see it. So thank you, Danny, for sharing that. Appreciate that. Okay, speaking of hungering. Well, as promised, I did tell you that I would talk on fasting. I said this now for the last few weeks because we are entering into a season where we are calling you as a church, if you call this place home or the Wave home or Church by the Bay home, we feel from the Lord. We're being called into a season of just seeking the Lord's face, praying and fasting, because there's actually something significant about fasting. And if I'm honest, up until a few weeks ago, I didn't really know what was so significant about fasting. I know that I'm not the only one. Many of you have had quite a little bit of anxiety about this. I think I've had more phone calls and conversations with people about this upcoming fast than anything else we've decided to do in the church. Which excites me in a lot of ways, because I would argue that if there's this much internal opposition to fasting, there's got to be something spiritually amazing about it. But we'll see. Okay, here we go. So, fasting. Jesus says that there are times of feasting and there are times of fasting. He says to John's disciples in Matthew 9 when they come asking, hey, why don't your disciples fast? You know, we have to fast. Why don't your disciples fast? And he says that, you know, there's times and seasons to fast. And he says, you know, the guests at a wedding reception don't fast when the bride's there, e.g. when the party's going on. But they do when the groom goes away. And as we know, he was talking prophetically about his disciples don't fast because he's hanging out with them. He's with them. But it's when he goes, and it's when we need him to show up in our life in power, when we need some of his promises to come to fruition, those are the times we fast because we're dependent on his deliverance. We're dependent on him. And we've set 2025 as a year up that as a church, we're going hard after him and his face. But as a group of congregations, we felt it was time to take a period of time together to seek the Lord collectively and to fast. Why, you might ask? Well, that's what we're going to unpack today, because I think fasting actually has something pretty significant for us that's a gift from the Lord, for those that choose to do it. But this morning I just want to look at what is fasting, what does the Bible say about it, why do it, e.g. what are the rewards that are involved in it, because that passage we read this morning says that there are rewards for those who fast. The Father will reward you. And finally, how do we do it? All right, first one. What is fasting? This guy here called Dr. Miles Monroe, Mel Brunt sent me through just this little short chapter. It was amazing. It was about 40 minutes on fasting. It really changed my perspective of it. It was amazing. But he says this. He says fasting is a conscious, intentional decision to abstain for a time from the pleasure of eating in order to gain vital spiritual benefits. At the essence of fasting, both the Hebrew and the Greek word for fasting talk about the same thing. It's an abstinence from food, or it's a pause for a period of time from eating. So I just want to make it really clear, it's about food. Well, the reason why I say that is because when we started this journey, I was like, and the other guys were like, yeah, we need to get into fasting. Those pastors are a bit more older and mature than I am, let's be honest. I was like, well, we can just fast social media. We can do all these other things. And what I've come to realize as I've pressed into this a lot more is that fasting specifically relates to food. We can go without many other things in our life, social media, tech, alcohol, sweet things, like just whatever those things that we kind of crave are, and they are good because for an extended period of time, having a break from those things will bring us closer to God. Removing those distractions that we run to when we're not feeling well can be helpful, but the Bible says there's something very specific about abstaining from food. So I'll come back to that in a minute. Don't let that fill your heart with anxiety. Hang in there with me. But I am saying that when I've said in the past, fasting can be many things, that's strictly not true. The fast that the Bible talks to refers to an abstinence from food. All right? Why is this so significant? How can we stop the body from eating? We need food to live, don't we? Yeah, but how much? What kind? What's good for us and what's actually unhelpful for us? Is it possible that we've become so dependent on food even to help us get through our anxiety or our hard days? Is it possible that we look to food every time we feel something deep inside us, we just think, if I have that, I'll feel better? John Mark Comer, who's written heaps about going back to essentially just core practices of what the early disciples did, says this. He says, fasting is about to starve the flesh to feed the spirit. What a cool little quote. We starve the flesh to allow our spirit to be fed. So you could read that a different way and say, well, if you gorge your body, you're starving your spirit. I think it's ironic that I'm talking on it this week because we have just spent a week away in the bush. Those that were with us know we ate like kings and queens every night. There were just too many desserts, which is amazing what you can do with a camp oven. Those of you who know Mitch Bear, goodness me. But there are times where we feast, and then there are times when we actually need to put what our body craves on hold to actually press into the Spirit. I know Paul says, one of the opponents to the gospel in Philippians is this idea that our God is our stomach. He writes about some of the people that he's hanging out with, which basically means is whatever their stomach tells them they need, whatever desire they feel they need to get that instant gratification for, they just respond to it. He's saying that these are people that have no willpower or strength or control over themselves anymore. And it's unhelpful because the moment they get an urge, they just respond to it. And we're not supposed to be citizens of this world. We're not supposed to give in to all the instant gratifications and the cravings of the flesh. I wonder if we've lost the ability to say no a lot. And I can tell you, because I've tried to practice this, there is nothing like stopping the body from eating that shows you how many desires of the flesh you actually have. Jesus said, my food is to do the will of my Father. He said to the disciples when they went away seeking food and came back quite a few hours later, they're like, have you had anything to eat? And he said to them, I eat food that you know nothing about. I'm going to suggest to you today that there's something really significant about going without food, fasting, that will draw you really, really close to the heart of God, to the source of power, to the source of strength, to the source of the only thing that can deliver you from some of the bondage that's going on in your life. All right. But what does the Bible say about fasting? The Bible actually says a significant amount about fasting. One of my angst in this last week has been, how do I condense everything into a single message? And I can't. So you're getting a bit of a shotgun today. It's mentioned more than 70 times in the Bible. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I don't want to overplay the fasting hand today. I would say it's something that is significantly used in the life of a believer. It was certainly huge throughout the Old Testament. But I'm saying it's one discipline that God gives you as a gift if you want to get close to him. You with me? Cool. So it's used over 70 times in the Bible. It's nearly always inextricably linked or coupled with prayer. So there's this idea that prayer and fasting go hand in hand together. And just wait until you start starving your body, you will want to pray. Because you want to do something, and it's like that hole that's sitting in there, that yearning for something to go in, that's our cue to go, no, I need you. I need you and what you have more than I need something small to satisfy me right now. And finally, in Scripture, we see that it's nearly always situational or outcome focused or outcome based, meaning there is something going on in the lives of Israel or in the New Testament, in the lives of the believer, as you're about to see. I'll just talk quickly through some examples. But there's something going on that causes them to fast. There's a reason why they do it. And then we see that there are three kind of fasts. You know, you could roughly categorize them into three different things. We've got these three different types of fast. We've got an absolute fast, which is no food or water. So Paul in the New Testament, when he's walking along and he has that encounter, Saul, when he has that encounter with the Lord, he immediately goes and he eats nothing. No water, no food. That's an absolute fast. No water, no food for 3 days. Nothing at all. Ezra, the prophet, fasted for food and water for 3 days because he was so concerned with the state of Israel's unfaithfulness to the Lord. And in Ezra 10:6 it says this, then Ezra withdrew from before the house of God. He went to the room of Jehohanan, son of Elishiab. While he was there, and he ate no food and drank no water because he continued to mourn over the unfaithfulness of the exiles. Then we have Queen Esther. For those of you that know the story, when her people are about to be wiped out and destroyed, Mordecai goes and says, hey, you need to go before the king. And she says, no, I'm going to die. And he says, well, we're all going to die and you're not going to be spared either. So she says, right, call everybody, 3-day fast, no food, no water. We're talking about desperate times, call for desperate measures when it comes to these 3-day absolute fasts. For some reason, they're always 3 days. But it's this period where they do no food and no water for about 3 days. Now, I'm not a medical person. I know that the body can't live without water for an extended period of time. It can without food, but it can't without water. So a 3-day fast is usually for something that's pretty diabolical, where you really need the Lord to move because you're not going to have a life if he doesn't type thing. So that's the absolute fast. Then we move to more of like the traditional fast, which is no food. This is what we commonly refer to when we talk about fasting and what we commonly see right throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's going without food for a period of time. Whether that be a day or even from sun up till 3 p.m, which was quite common, or whether it's sun up to sundown, or whether it's 7 days, 14 days, or even as we know with Jesus did 40 days in the desert, we're told, with no food. It doesn't say that he was without water. It says that the devil came to test him with bread and with food, and then when he came out he was hungry. It doesn't mention anything about him being thirsty. It does mention elsewhere that Elijah was supernaturally, and Moses, supernaturally fasted for 40 days, and the Lord specifically sustained them. But here in the traditional fast, we're looking at no food. And this type of fast is by far the most common in Scripture. It's often done as a whole congregation, or the whole people of Israel would do it together, much like what we're hoping to do as a whole people. Now, what that looks like might be different for us, But we know there's something powerful when we bond together. Our week of 24/7 prayer, the movement in this place, the activity of the Spirit was phenomenal. It was great. But there's something about us all being a part of something together, that unity that commands a blessing. It's attractive to the Lord, which is why we don't all just go off into a corner and worship on our own. We start with worship, corporate collective worship each week, because there's something powerful that pulls us together. And often the Old Testament fasts, they were conducted in certain months, on certain days, for certain specific things. The early church took this on. They fasted for 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. John Wesley, when he started to research this, he started to see the benefits, the extraordinary benefits of fasting. So he called the church to, and a bit of a revival struck out across the world about people just pressing in for fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays from sun up till sundown. And then finally, we see the partial, or what's often referred to as the Daniel fast. And what did I put there? I think I put there, it should say no meats or sweets, but it's nuts and raw veggies. So it's this idea of limiting these things, these sugars that the body craves, to just give it what it needs. And this is a great fast to do, potentially for some of us who are still going to be involved in work over those 2 weeks when we're called the fast. So you've got to do a lot of physical stuff, or I don't know, but this is a good one to do because you can still have some sustenance, but you are starving your body of some of the things it doesn't need, but it desperately wants. Elijah in 1 Kings 17 is also credited with a partial fast as well. But here's the point. All of the biblical fasts revolved around withdrawing from the world and what the world gives as our counterfeit comfort, and instead moving towards the Father, towards God, for what he can actually only give us. Joel 2:12-13 says this. Yet even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping and mourning. So rend your hearts and not your garments, and return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in loving devotion, and he relents from sending disaster. We fast when we need God. And so it's no surprise to me that as a world, particularly Western world, particularly middle to upper class, white society, Torquay, we don't fast very often. Why? Because we don't need very often. And what I'm telling you today is that's not necessarily a good thing. Because I think sometimes the pressure and the temptation is that we have to do it on our own. Or you just need to push through this on your own strength. But if we want him to move in a supernatural way, we have to make space for him to do it. I heard it said that if you can achieve all your dreams and ambitions, then they're not God's. So if you don't need God to show up radically in your life, I'd say you're out of touch with what God needs you to do. So why fast? I love this little quote. This guy's written a great book on fasting. Arthur Wallace says this. He says, there is a concern in the hearts of many for the recovery of apostolic power. But how can we recover apostolic power while neglecting apostolic practice? And how can we expect the power to flow if we do not prepare the channels? Fasting is a God-appointed means for the flowing of his grace and power we can afford to neglect no longer. Why fast? Well, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why we fast. Number 1, in that passage we read this morning, was it's not, if you pray or if you fast. Jesus specifically says in that section, the Sermon on the Mount, when. It's a command. But can I tell you, it's a command that's a gift to you. It's not a command that's a punishment to you. And so I think that's what I'm asking the Lord, and what I've been wrestling with this morning. This has been rough for me this week, because I really want you to hear it, not from the point of condemnation, but rather conviction and therefore invitation. This is the kindness of the Lord extending an invite to anyone who's hungry or wants to, and saying, hey, if you want more, if you want to be set free of some of the things that you're continually battling, here's a little tool I've got for you that will help you. Fast the flesh, feed the spirit. Quit what the world wants to give you, come to me. This is a command, but as we know, and we're going to get to, it has a huge reward. The second thing is, there's a desperation and a desire for God. That's why, as a church, as 3 churches, as a region, we're going after this together, because we're like, we have a desire and a desperation for the Lord to move on us and the people around us like he did for Danny's uncle. Like, I hope you're here to be more than entertained an hour and a half a week, because this isn't good entertainment, I assure you. I'm going to suggest, though, that fasting might awaken you to what you've received, which might make you hungry and desperate to share with the people around you. Or it might awaken you enough to hear what the Lord's doing and what he wants to do in and through you, the plan he has for your life. It's just a gift. So that's just what I want you to hear today. This is a gift. Thank you, Father, for this gift that you have given me. The ability to be able to fast, to press into you. It's a gift. It's not a punishment. It's a gift. Lastly, though, man, he's just so good to us. It comes with a reward. Like prayer, like just before this passage, we're told the same thing with prayer. The reward is that the Father, because it says that, put on oil. Don't tell anyone else you're fasting. Don't get your reward and your gratification from the people around you, because the point of the fast is to press in to the Father, because your Father knows what you need. It's his presence that we're going after. It's his divine power. We need to come from there to here. It's his peace that we need to carry deep within us. He is our reward. I mean, we started that this year, didn't we? Jan 5, we said, we're going after you. We're going after the Father's face. We only want the Father's affirmation over us this year. Zechariah 7:5 says this, ask all the people of the land and the priests, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th months for these 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? I said before, the world is all over this. Fasting has been a craze now for more than 10 years. You want to get fit, do anabolic fasting, metabolic fasting, whatever it is. All the other religions fast habitually. Everyone's caught on to the benefits of fasting. There are physiological benefits to fasting just as much as there are spiritual ones. But the main thing we're going after is this. We're going after him and what he wants. We're not doing this for weight loss. We're not doing this for physical conditioning. We want him. We want the Father. Okay. Last thing. All right, how do we do it? The process. Okay. So, the first thing I want to say is you have to come willingly. This is the number one thing we talk about with our guys at rehab. We say, hey, if you want to change the way that you think, if you want to stop giving in to addiction and to whatever your flesh desires and craves every single day, attitude is the first place we've got to start. And when it comes to fasting, it's kind of no different. If you don't come willingly, wow, you're going to fight. And we're probably all going to fight, but you're just going to fight with a bad attitude. John Mark Comer says this when he talks about fasting. See that J there? He says the J curve is the best way to look at fasting. You're going to start, how do I do it your way? You're going to start here and it's going to go down and get harder before it goes up. Does that make sense? That's why I put the J there for you. So that you will remind yourself that when you're hangry, you're tired and you don't feel well, you're going like, Steve said this would happen. This is supposed to be hard. This is supposed to be difficult because there's something so great a reward as I go. And we know that's how it works. Anything really good you want, you're going to have to press in for it. So it's the same here. It's going to be hard. I'm promising you that. If it's not, you won't appreciate it in the same way. And that's okay. We're here to push past the hard and say, I want you more than I want an instant meal right now or an instant gratification. We're going in for something deeper. All right, so number one, you've got to come willingly. The devil is not on your side. He will try and get at you any way he can. He does not want you to do this. You're aware of that? He will try and give you every opportunity. What does he do? Cheat, steal, and kill? Whatever. Anyway, be mindful of it. You're going to have to be focused and diligent if you want to push through it. Secondly, I want you to think about how you're going to fast. I want you to choose your fast. We looked at those 3 fasts before. The absolute, the traditional, and the partial. I want you to think through, when you go to take time to fast, what are you going to do? What do you feel the Lord's calling you into doing, that he will help release a grace for you to be able to achieve? I studied under a guy in the States. He was an amazing man. He would prepare his body for fasting. He would do a 40-day fast every year, but he would take a week to prepare his body for it so that it would be ready for it once he started. And then it would take him a week to reintroduce foods back in afterwards. It's important sometimes that we actually do prepare our body. I would not advise pounding coffee the day before or the few days before, right up before, if you want to stop from coffee for a week. That's not going to help you. But Benny would take a week to prepare his body before he'd get used to it. I want to suggest that when you choose your fast, that you start small and you start achievable, because we want to succeed in this. And so as a church, we know that we're going to try and hit this 2-week period where we're calling everybody to fast. What that looks like, we're going to leave that up to you. But, you might start with just, hey, I'm just going to do a day. I'm going to do a day a week, and I'm going to go just one meal in that day, in that week, and I'm going to pray. Some of you will be like, no, I just want to miss breakfast every week, or you'll get up early and have breakfast and you'll miss lunch and then you have a later dinner. Don't know. Some of you say, I'm going to stop dinner and then all the snacks I have after dinner. I don't know. You decide with the Lord what you want to do. There's lots of options. The point is him. We want to press into him. We want to remove some of the distraction of the world to press into him. So you get to choose your fast. Some of you might need to see a doctor. Some of you, you might be on medication. You probably do need to see a doctor and find out if that's going to affect you if you stop eating food. We don't want you to be silly about what you do. But also, some of you probably need to see a doctor because you've told yourself you can't fast, and the doctor will probably say you can. High cost, high reward, but it's got to be achievable. All right, pick a time or plan your time. So for us, this is kind of an easy one. This is a process you could use as you think about fasting throughout the year. But for us, it's kind of easy. We're asking you to fast from, I wrote the dates down so I wouldn't forget it, the 9th, so Sunday the 9th to February the 23rd. We're going to start on the 9th and we're going to finish on the 23rd. It'll start with worship at the Wave that night. It will finish, we'll do the midweek one here at TCF on the 16th, and we'll finish at Church by the Bay on the 23rd. And I think most likely we'll run a full 48 hours of prayer from Friday through to Sunday here at TCF on the weekend of the 16th. But pick a time and plan for when you're going to fast. Sometimes those circumstances are just going to arrive in your life where you're trying to press into something, like when the disciples are trying to pray to cast out a demon. They bring their problem to Jesus, and Jesus says you need to pray and fast about that. Well, if they want to see a solution to that, they need to pray and fast immediately. And sometimes there'll be times when it won't suit and you will have to press in and it will be extra hard, but desperate times call for desperate measures. The Lord in his kindness will do that sometimes. And finally, be accountable. Good news is we're all going after this one together. So it's going to be good because in some ways we'll have strength in numbers. But I want you to think about who you're going to share with about what you're going to do. Your life group would be a great start. Or but somebody else who you're going to say, hey, I want you to hold me accountable because I know it's going to be hard. This is what I want to do. If you live in a family together, you might want to say, well, this is what we'll do together. I don't know. Or get a partner, somebody else you know and love, and say, hey, will you fast with me like this? This is what I want to do. I don't know. For the first one, though, I think it's quite helpful to do it together. Israel fasted together, and I think it's good for us. The point is, though, that we want to turn from the world and we want to seek the Lord together. Because this is what we're going after. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. I just want to say this one more time. The Lord has given us fasting as a gift. All right, can you say the word gift with me? Go. Gift. Is a gift a good thing? Well, it depends who gives it, I suppose, isn't it? Goodness me. But I really want you to walk away from today going, man, some of you will feel like you're juggling enough plates that you don't need another one to spin. Okay? I get that. Completely get that. Maybe that's exactly why you need to fast. I don't know. But what I am saying is it's an act of devotion, desperation, and even worship to the Lord. The reward is great for you. So I pray this morning that you hear the heart of this very broad smattering of what fasting is. I pray that you hear the heart from the Father of what it is and why it's a gift for you. It's my prayer and our leadership's prayer that you'll just go away and you'll have a think about, well, God, what do I want to give up to get more of you? That he might just start to speak to your heart and excite you about what he might do as you sacrifice your flesh to feed your spirit. Once you stand, I'm going to pray. Then we'll sing. Oh dear. I can still feel the anxiety in the room. It's hilarious. God, again, I just ask that you bring your spirit of conviction, which just reminds us of who we are, which will just call us out now on any place we're running to for creature comforts, for counterfeit comforts that are just not you, that at the end of the day actually rob us from the freedom that we're chasing. Yeah, we just tell the voice of condemnation to go. Now we thank you, Father, for all the gifts you've given to us. Your presence, the gift of prayer and communication with you, the gift of worship, the gift of each other, and finally the gift of your Spirit that lives within us. We need you, Father. We are desperate for you. Forgive us for the times we've had that desperation met by the world and the things around us. Will you call us into more? Call us into the deeper things that you are wanting to do. And we believe that through the power of your Spirit, we'll be able to achieve those things.
This morning when I was in the prayer room, God gave me a picture of the fire embers in the middle of a campfire. And God just said that there's some people that want more than those embers. They want those flames. They want to reignite with what they had when they first became a Christian. They want more. And so if that's you today, we would love to pray for you. So you can ignite those flames that you once had and have that burning desire to be closer to God. So please, if that's you, I'd love to pray for you today.